Assalamu alaikum guys, this is Dr. Fatima and very long since the previous video of pathophysiology of COVID-19. Today we are going to discuss how we can diagnose a patient with COVID-19. Let's watch this video because this is an important video and I try to make things clear and easy for all of us to understand so that we can do best in patient management. So let's start today. Okay, so we are going to discuss history taking in COVID-19 patients, the physical examination and investigations. As all of us know, diagnosis is not just investigations. Diagnosis begins with taking history and then doing physical examination on the patients and then go for some investigations. So we will discuss today all these aspects of diagnosing COVID-19. Starting with history, so what we need to ask in history. Mind it, you have to ask a few particular things in every patient in whom you are suspecting a COVID-19 thing. Starting with fever, patient will give you history of fever in past few days. He can come to the hospital sooner or later, but he will definitely give you history of fever, which will be, greater than 100.4 degree Fahrenheit. The other thing will be cough. So the fever and cough, they are high suspicion factors in history. Cough can be productive and cough can be non-productive or dry. So as in past video on pathophysiology, we discussed that 70% of the patients will be having dry cough, okay, and only 30% will be having productive cough if they are, if there is superimposed bacterial infection or pneumonia. So you need to ask for fever and cough primarily. Then what else you have to ask is shortness of breath. Shortness of breath can start gradually and it can start with only on exertion, but then it can lead to shortness of breath even on rest. So you have to ask about shortness of breath associated with cough and fever in past few days. The other thing which is very important in diagnosing or in history of COVID-19 is recent travel, because this disease has become a pandemic due to travel. Patients who were having COVID-19 or who were carriers of COVID-19, they traveled across the countries and this disease, spread like anything in a few months in the whole world. So recent travel history is very important in this. Okay, we have to ask other things as well, which we can suspect in the patients with COVID-19. For example, history of diarrhea, fever, vomiting, and abdominal pain. A few patients can also present with this particular thing as well. And also you have to ask about history of anosmia. I mean, less sense of smell, because COVID-19 is also going to affect your olfactory nerve and leads to decrease in the sense of smell as well as in the sense of taste. So you need to ask these particular questions, but the most important questions are written in this particular slide. Now we have to do the physical examination. Of course, you have taken the history, thorough history, particular history as well as systemic history, and now you have to do the physical examination. So how will we start the physical examination? After uh, history, we will attach the monitor and we will take vital signs. First of all, we always take the vital signs. So you will see on the cardiac monitor that the patient's saturation is decreased, which is less than 94% at room air. So you need to give the patient oxygen. The next thing you see that if the patient is already hypoxic, he must be hypoxemic. And as you know that we have got chemoreceptors in the form of carotid and aortic bodies, and they detect the hypoxemia. And when there is particular amount of hypoxemia in the blood, it leads to sympathetic stimulation, which leads to increase your heart rate as well as blood pressure and many other things which come in heading of sympathetic stimulation. So you can see tachycardia in these patients, which is heart rate greater than 100 beats per minute. Okay, in very grave conditions, you can see hypotension when the patient has got, you know, COVID-19 and he is very critically ill, and he has got multi-organ dysfunction, or you know, he has got systemic inflammatory response syndrome, then you can also see hypotension, and it's a grave thing. You know, you have to pay a lot of attention on such patients who have come with a high suspicion of COVID-19 and they have got hypotension as well. It means that the perfusion of the vital organs is compromised. Okay, the other thing is fever, as I already mentioned in the history, that the fever is going to be at least greater than 100.4 degree Fahrenheit, as well as the patient is, you know, as he's hypoxic, he's hypoxemic, he needs to have oxygen inside the body, so he will, you know, increase his respiratory rate by default, and he will be tachypneic. So these are the vital signs you need to see in the patient with COVID-19. What else? Now we have to do the systemic examination, starting with the particular examination, because this COVID-19 or coronavirus is going to affect your lungs, and particularly in the lungs, the type 2 pneumocytes. So you need to start with the physical examination, systemic examination with respiratory signs. You will auscultate the patient, you will see the cyanosis because of hypoxemia and hypoxia, central cyanosis as well as peripheral cyanosis. Well, yes, we can see this cyanosis. Okay, if I auscultate the patient, what features I can see, or what sounds I can hear. Okay, starting with the auscultation first, it is going to be a bronchial breathing. It can be wheezing if, you know, there is narrowing of the bronchioles due to leukotrienes. I already mentioned in the previous video that there are going to be the leukotrienes which are going to bronchoconstrict, and then, you know, if the bronchi or bronchioles are narrow, it's going to it's going to be harder for passing the oxygen inside and carbon dioxide out of the lungs. So it can be wheezing, which you can hear on auscultation. You can also hear crackles, which can be fine or coarse. Fine crackles you can hear when there is pulmonary edema, and coarse when there is, you know, consolidation of the lung, which both of these things are possible in these patients. Cyanosis I already mentioned. What else is labored breathing? The patient will be having hard time breathing, and the patient will be, you know, using the um, accessory muscles of respiration. So this is again very important, that you have to see the patient from head to toe and see which things are correlating with COVID-19. Next, things are, you know, other signs, which are other systemic signs basically. uh, okay, these are particularly the same things, but we have to cover all the systems which COVID-19 is going to affect. So starting with respiration, you have to see the function of heart as well. Okay, but you can see again cyanosis, it comes under respiration and heart as well. And the patient, if the patient's heart is not being oxygenated, and if there is no you know, adequate perfusion of the heart, it leads to MI, and it can lead to arrhythmias, I mean tachycardia and tachyarrhythmias, or even bradyarrhythmias at times. Okay, if the patient, again, if the patient's perfusion is less, and you know, the brain is not getting enough oxygen and enough blood supply, the patient can present with disorientation. Of course, he is going to be disoriented because of the labored breathing, as well as he is going to be disoriented because of the low perfusion, low cerebral perfusion pressure. Okay, because of low mean arterial pressure. Okay, so disorientation can be a sign in these patients. What else? You pass a Foley catheter in the urethra and you see that the patient is oliguric. Why? Because kidneys are not getting enough oxygen, because of hypotension, because of decreased total peripheral resistance, because of venodilatation due to the leukotrienes. So this is very important, that you have to see the multiple organs which are not being perfused, and then their effect is going to be decreased. So if the kidneys are concerned, he can be oliguric, or he can be, you know, he can be passing concentrated urine, or even he can lead to having anguria. So this is very important again as well. Go to abdominal pain and vomiting. I mean, if the gut is involved, which it involves at times, the COVID-19 involves the gut as well at times, so the patient can present with abdominal pain and vomiting. So this is another thing. And what else is anosmia and or hyposmia, which is decreased sense of smell, and other is dysgeusia, which is decreased sense of taste. I mean, the patient will say, I have decreased sense of taste or altered sense of taste. So these are the other signs which you have to see in the patients in physical examination and in the systemic examination. Moving ahead, investigations. So, of course, we have covered history, which leads to the physical examination, and we have covered the Kriban whole physical examination, and now we have to move the patient for a few investigations. Now let's see which investigations we have to do. Okay, again, we know that patient is high suspicion of COVID-19. Now we will try to configure that if it is really a patient of COVID-19 or not. So we will start with sending two things: RT-qPCR, which is reverse transcription quantitative, not qualitative, quantitative PCR polymerase chain reaction. It will tell the presence of a virus in the body. Okay, but this PCR thing is not, you know, it's not enough to diagnose, because its sensitivity is around, 60 to 70%, and some people say it's 80%. So it's variable. Its sensitivity is not, about 100% or 90%. So it's not enough alone. And the other thing is going to be the viral serology. Viral serology contains IgM and IgG, which are the antibodies. And these antibodies are made by the body when the body sees that I have a COVID-19 inside my body and I have to protect my human being from getting infected. So body produces a certain amount of, uh, you know, IgM and IgGs, which are visible in the blood at different times of infection. So they tell the status of immune reaction against virus. Important thing in this particular slide is that RT-qPCR is not going to be a blood reaction, a blood test. It mostly is going to be the secretions from your nasopharynx or from the trachea. So we pass a swab in the nasopharynx and we just roll it down, and then we take take a sample and send it to the laboratory. Or if the patient is already intubated, we can take the tracheal sample as well. Okay, or if we do the bronchoscopy, we can take the secretions and we can do the RT-PCR. As we know, we have to go for PCR and as well as serology. How will we see that? How will we, interpret the results of PCR as well as serology? So we can understand the particular concept in this particular slide. On x-axis, we have got time, and on y-axis we have got levels of different IgM and IgG and SARS-CoV-2 RNA and antigen. Okay, okay, we have got three periods, which I can see that a window period, then is a decline period, and then is a coalescence period. The window period is the period, it is defined as the period in which the COVID-19 is entered in the patient's body, but the patient is not having any signs and symptoms. It can be variable, it can be 5 days, or it can be of 7 days. Then is a decline period. Decline period is the period in which patient is recovering, and this decline period is going to be the around 10 days to 20 days from not the onset of the signs and symptoms, but from the time of entrance of COVID-19 in the body. Okay, so around 10th day, the patient is going to recover. I mean, the patient will be having active signs and symptoms for only 3 days. I mean, from 5 days to 10 days, or 7 to 10 days. Okay, then is the coalescence period, which is the period in which the patient has been recovered and now only IgG is detectable in the blood, and as well as PCR is detectable, but it is less. So what happens in the window period? If you send PCR and serology, you will see a positive PCR and negative IgM as well as IgG. Okay, if a patient is having active signs and symptoms, or early time of signs and symptoms or onset of symptoms, he is going to be having IgM detectable in the blood, as well as PCR, which is going up. Now, on around 10th day or 14th day, the patient is going to recover. And if the patient is recovering, you can still detect the PCR because COVID-19 is still in the body, and you can detect the PCR in the body. Okay, and IgM is also in the peak. And it was in the peak, and now it's going to decline because the patient is recovering. And now what is going up, which is IgG, because IgG is a marker of long-term immunity, and if the patient is recovering, then IgG comes into action, and it is now detectable in the blood, and it remains there in the coalescence period, and PCR also remains positive in the coalescence period. Now what happens if you get a PCR as well as serology in the window period, and you get a negative PCR? Okay, if there is a negative PCR, the patient might not have COVID-19 at all. And if the patient is having active signs and symptoms, and you get a PCR which is negative, but the IgM is positive, then you have to resend the PCR because it's probably false negative. Okay, so this is the explanation of clinical significance of PCR and serology. This table can also show what we have discussed in the previous slide, which was the graphical presentation, and we have all discussed it in the previous slide, so you just need to see it. Okay, you are not going to leave a patient who is hypoxic and hypoxemic without an arterial blood gases. You will see what you will see in arterial blood gases. The patient is going to be having in active phase of symptoms and signs. The patient is tachypneic, and if the patient is tachypneic and hypoxemic, he is going to be further tachypneic, and he's going to wash out carbon dioxide. If he is going to wash out the carbon dioxide will be low in the blood, and on ABGs you can see we have a low carbon dioxide, and when we have a low carbon dioxide, primarily this condition is called as respiratory alkalosis, because carbon dioxide is a respiratory acid. So if you decrease it, the pH is going to be up, and PCO2 is going to be low, and this condition is called as respiratory alkalosis. Okay, now a patient is exhausted after the acute symptoms phase. Now a patient is exhausted. He has a hard time taking breaths, and now he is exhausted. So what's going to happen? The patient is going to retain carbon dioxide, and if the patient is going to retain carbon dioxide and pH is still low, and patient is also going to retain the carbon dioxide, the carbon dioxide in the arterial blood gases will be high. And if the carbon dioxide is high, the pH will be low again, because we have got acidic pH, because carbon dioxide is high in the blood, and because of the fact that oxygen is also low. This is called as type 2 respiratory failure. Okay, and the condition is called as respiratory acidosis because of the fact that carbon dioxide is high in the blood. What else you can see in the arterial blood gases? If a patient is in multi-organ dysfunction or a systemic inflammatory response syndrome is there, the patient is going to be having metabolic acidosis. You see, we have not discussed bicarb in the previous two conditions, which were respiratory alkalosis and acidosis, because bicarb is going to be variable, because these are the acute conditions. It is going to be variable according to the compensation by metabolic phenomenon. But when the patient is going to be metabolically acidotic, what does it mean? It means that the pH is low, oxygen is already low, because patient is of course primarily a patient of COVID-19, and he is going to be having hypoxia or hypoxemia. Now what happens is that bicarb is also low. Bicarbonate is primarily low, and carbon dioxide is going to be high due to compensation, or no compensation, because of the fact that carbon dioxide is being retained, and now bicarb is also low. If the bicarb is also low, with this condition is going to be metabolic acidosis. Okay, so this metabolic acidosis tells you about a sepsis condition. The patient is in sepsis due to COVID-19. This is a very grave condition and has a high mortality. So you need to see all these three patterns. Okay, now systemic investigations. All of us know that COVID-19 is not going to affect only the lungs. It's also going to affect all the vital organs and even blood. So what we will see for the blood, we will do CKMB because of the fact that the patient can go into MI. We will send TROP-I, TROP-T as well as pro-BNP for seeing that if the patient is tachypneic due or if the patient is having fine crackles. So we need to rule it out that if the patient is in right heart failure or the pulmonary edema is due to COVID-19. So we are going to send pro-BNP as well. In liver, we are going to send the LFTs, and ALT will be raised, AST will be raised, C-reactive protein, interleukin 6. These are not included in LFTs, but we are going to send these things as well because they are produced by the liver and they are going to be high. C-reactive protein, interleukin 6, ferritin, LDH, they are the high mortality markers as well as they are the inflammatory markers. But in COVID-19, they are the high mortality markers. If the patient is having all these four things positive and higher, the patient is going to, he's going to have a very tough time, and the mortality is high. What else is procalcitonin? Procalcitonin tells you about the bacterial infection. If it is positive and it's high, you can see that there is a bacterial infection. But in COVID-19, because it's a viral infection primarily, so procalcitonin may be less or maybe normal. So you can rule it out that this is not a pneumonia case, this is a COVID-19 case or a viral case. Now, what if a patient is having PCR positive as well as procalcitonin positive? So now you can see that if the PCR for COVID-19 is positive as well as procalcitonin is positive, you need to interpret that the patient is also having superimposed bacterial infection due to this decreased immunity or any other particular factor. Okay, you also going to have ECG because in heart we have sent the CKMB, TROP-I, TROP-T, pro-BNP. What we can see now, we can see as non-ST segment elevation MI or ST segment elevation MI, arrhythmias, or as well as QT prolongation. Why I have mentioned QT prolongation here? Because hydrochloroquine is being given to the patients, and it's a side effect of hydrochloroquine that it increases the QT segment. So QT prolongation is also to be seen in ECG to see the effect of hydrochloroquine. Okay, we are also going to send CBC. What we are going to see in CBC? We will expect lymphocytopenia. We will expect thrombocytopenia. These two cells will be declined in the CBC. Coagulation will be deranged because of the fact that liver is not functioning properly. So the INR, PT, ABDT, INR are going to be prolonged, and there is a deranged coagulation or fibrinogen and D dimers. Because of the fact that we know that the patient is going to have multiple thrombi in the blood, as we have discussed this particular thing in the previous video. So if his patient is in DIC, you also need to see that fibrinogen, D dimers, PT, APTT, INR, all these things need to be sent to interpret that if the patient is in DIC or not. Okay, and if the liver is damaged, you can also see the bleeding, the patient who is bleeding due to deranged PT, APTT, and INR. So these are the two different variables. Last but not the least is kidneys. You can send the RFTs, and you will be seeing raised creatinine, raised urea and BUN, and decreased estimated GFR. Okay, now we have to, of course, we have to do the after laboratory studies, we have to do some imaging studies as well. So we will start with chest X-ray, and you can see these two chest X-rays. The left chest X-ray, you can see that we have got bilateral heterogeneous opacities. These are not the homogeneous opacities as we see in the pleural effusion. Okay, so these are the bilateral heterogeneous opacities, which are ground glass appearance of the heterogeneous opacities due to infiltrates. The right chest X-ray you can also see the heterogeneous opacities bilaterally, and this is a chest X-ray of COVID-19. So you can expect the chest X-ray like this in COVID-19 patients. Else you want to see if the chest X-ray is not determining anything, you can go for a CT scan. And on CT scan, you are going to see a ground glass opacities, which is also a characteristic feature in ARDS. And the characteristic for COVID-19 is going to be crazy paving pattern. You can see in this right side CT scan picture that the patient is having crazy paving patterns. So these are the two findings in the imaging studies of CT scan. Last is ultrasound. If you cannot move the patient to the CT scan machine for cross contamination, you can do the ultrasound yourself. In ultrasound chest, because the patient is having pulmonary edema, because the lungs are filled, so we can see the B lines, which are the vertical lines you can see in the left side, which are the vertical white array of lines, and they show fluid in the alveoli. So these are the B lines which you can see in the patients with COVID-19 with pulmonary edema. If the patient is having consolidation as well, you can see on the right side that we can see the consolidation air bronchograms. We can see that we have the consolidation in the ultrasound. So these are all the findings in imaging studies. I hope that every one of you who is listening to this video has understood the diagnostics of COVID-19, and I really hope that if you people don't understand anything, you will ask me and I will always be available for you guys. Thank you so much for watching the video. Do not forget to subscribe the channel and share the videos. Thank you.